Hello, I'm Jamie and welcome to Sci-Fi-Vision. Today I'm going to be breaking down the season 2 premiere of Severance, Hello, Miss Cobel. I'll be recapping it and going into the tiniest detail that you may have missed, which may or may not become important later on in the series. The episode picks up with Mark's innie, when he wakes up in the elevator. Now for Mark, no time has passed at all since he's been at his sister's. He just found out his outies wife Gemma was Miss Casey, shouted out to Devin that she was alive, so he's a little rattled and in a state of chaos, having just gotten that big revelation when he gets out of the elevator. He doesn't know what has happened to his friends or anything else yet. There's a bit of a question when he's running through the hallways if he's looking specifically for the wellness center because of Miss Casey, or he's just rushing around trying to find out what's going on. Because honestly, he looks very confused, almost in fact like he can't find the room he's looking for. More on that later. The one thing I want to mention as he's running around this hallway is that the movements, the way the camera whips around him, really reminds me of a video game with the steep angles. I'm not saying he's in a video game. I'm sure that's a theory. Just something that I noticed that I wanted to mention. It is a really cool scene the way they filmed it. So the other thing is, we know that the show plays a lot with color theory. Blue and cooler tones generally represent the innies, red and warmer tones the outies, and they play a lot with that duality. Now in this shot, Mark runs by a purple office. I think maybe it's symbolizing the bleed between the two now that the innies have woken up inside the outies. It might be foreshadowing that this season we'll see a lot more of that, or at least some kind of blend between their two selves. Mark comes up to the door and he sees there is no sign for wellness. It looks like it's been painted over. Now, we already knew Miss Casey was fired and sent to the testing floor, but it seems like she's been erased. He goes in, the room's completely empty. It looks like they've removed the doors. You can see here on the wall that it looks like a picture's been removed. But also, you can see someone in the background is watching him. We never find out who he is. He's only there for a few frames. It looks male. But is it Milchek? I don't know who it is. Do you have a different theory? I'd like to know what you think. Tell me in the comments. So after that, Mark returns back out to the hall and he goes down to his office in macro data refinement. But inside are faces he doesn't recognize. We have the woman, Gwendolyn R., the man, Dario R., and the other older man who introduces himself as Mark W. But we're not really giving tons of time to even think about it because Milchek comes in with blue balloons with Mark's face all over him and tells him welcome back. Mark follows him down the hallway, asking about his teammates, but he doesn't really tell much of anything other than it's been 5 months and that what happened was one of the most painful moments in the history of the company. Now, has it really been 5 months? Do we take Milchek's word for it? To innies, it's like no time has passed, but it may have taken them a while to deal with the PR nightmare they've caused. It's really hard to say, but at any rate, Mark is definitely surprised by the amount of time that he says it's taken. Then Milchek then introduces him to Miss Huang, and he treats him like a child because he doesn't want him to be distracted by the balloons, which is kind of ironic since he gives the balloons to the teenager that's sitting there, which, by the way, is pretty odd. I mean, why is there a teenager working there in the first place? I mean, we find out in the next scene that she's got Milchek's old job. Now, I know there have been some theories that maybe Lumen's working on life extension, reanimation, transferring consciousness, something about that, just considering Gemma, Miss Casey, who may or may not have actually died. So could that be a reason? I don't know. But at any rate, she's very robotic, not unlike Milchek himself. So Mark goes with Milchek into his new office, which, again, notice, very blue. I also want to point out this crate in the corner. I'm not sure what it is. It kind of looks like a dog crate. May have no point, but just pointing it out. He tells Mark that Miss Cobel is no longer with the company and that he now manages the severed floor. And he finally does answer Mark that the others in MDR were not fired. He says that Helly and Irving both successfully made contact with people on the outside like he did, and that Dylan found out after the fact what happened. Dylan's outie. According to Milchek, the 4 of them have become internationally famous. They become known as the face of Severance Reform. He gives Mark a newspaper. You can see there it says "Innies blow the whistle." But can we believe any of this? First of all, you can tell it's from the town of Kier, PE. Now, there is no state that's PE. Is it possible it's not in the United States? I guess, but I mean, the show seems to be set in the United States, and that doesn't exist. Could just be so he doesn't know where they're at right now. But it's also quite clear that the image is photoshopped. In fact, it looks like it's taken from their team photo and a picture from a parade. At any rate, it also mentions some of the reforms like top-of-the-line recreational facilities, sexual liberations, we don't know what that's about, and improved snacks. The other things I want to mention in the newspaper that stand out, there's an article on Rickman, Mark's brother-in-law, about the book he's apparently written, These Values 9, How I Let Kier In. It seems like another lie since we know that Rickon didn't approve of the severing. It's more likely they added that maybe knowing that the innies were affected by his other book, The UUR. There's also an article about a break-in at Baird Creek Townhouses, which is where Mark's Audi lives. I'm not sure if this is referencing Cobel breaking in or not, but it's worth noting. So Milchek talks about locking them in at MDR office and also about Harmony Cobel and basically blames her for everything that was wrong at the company. He's using her as a scapegoat. And he does say that he knows she was at Mark's brother's party when he woke up, so they're aware of what happened. He also says that they tried for weeks to get the rest of the team back, but none of them except Mark agreed to come back. Mark's Audi actually begged to come back right away. Thankfully, Mark doesn't seem to be buying his bullshit, and he says that he wants to talk to his friends, but Milchek basically says, this isn't happening. So Mark goes back. He lets the balloons go in the hallway, so he clearly doesn't care about them. And he goes back to the office again. Now, this is where Mark W. says something that's a little interesting. He says that they got there an hour before Mark, and I have to question if that's relevant because we know that when they go in for work, their times are staggered, but it was implied it was like by a few minutes. So I'm not sure why they would be there an hour ahead. Now, this does seem like perhaps it was set up all for Mark's benefit. So could they be maybe not even really part of MDR? Maybe they're actors or something sent in. I really don't know. It just seems like an odd thing to say. Mark W. also talks about the office being cramped and the colors. I'm just mentioning this because he does say the keyboards were puce, but Gwendolyn says, no, they were purple. And as I mentioned before, purple with the blending, of the innies and outies. So since it's mentioned twice in the episode, it may be important. This is also where he calls Milchek Mr. Milkshake, which was great. Dario asks about pencils, and Mark shows him the supply closet. And again, note the colors, red, green, and blue paper. And also, Milchek later makes this comment about them not needing to get privacy in the supply closet. Now, there's no way they can walk into the supply closet. I believe the old one they could, and that is why I kind of wonder if it's possible maybe this office is in another location, and why I had mentioned earlier he looks like he can't find what he's looking for. Maybe they moved floors or something just to kind of see how he would react. I mean, there's so many things at play that they may just be, messing with Mark, but it does seem like it could be something. Gwendolyn also mentions that 3 of them put Wyoming on their input survey. I'm guessing that's probably just a joke, like maybe somebody on the team comes from Wyoming. Now, when they're done, Miss Huang comes in and says that they're going to play their game, where basically they go to the kitchenette, they all sit around the table, and they hold the ball, and each of them are going to tell a fact about themselves. That's where she says that this is her first day as deputy manager and that she was a crossing guard before this, which is still an odd job for a child. Now, Mark W., before we get on to him, I do want to mention the tokens there in the corner. There's a full jar for the vending machine, where before I think they were given 2 per day. So that's probably just one of the reforms. Mark W. says that he's from the NDR Department of Branch 5X. Now, we find out later from the video at Lumen that they are currently in Branch 501. So I'm curious what the significance of 5X is. He doesn't say, just that the department is shut down. Again, these are kind of like little details that may be completely unimportant, but could pop up later. So that's why I'm mentioning them. He also says he did work with Gwendolyn there. Mark's turn. He says that it's been 2 years since he's been there. He does kind of have a little flash of Gemma and remembering what happened, but of course he can't talk about that. He says that he's been lucky and he's made 4 friends today. At which point, Miss Huang looks at him and gives him this creepy look and says, "I must remind you, I'm a supervisor, not your friend." So he just kind of stares back at her. He's like, "All right, then, 3 friends," he says sarcastically. It's in the next scene that Gwendolyn is asking Mark about the perpetuity wing. She worked in a newer branch where the Egans were animatronic and did a choreographed dance, which would be 10 times creepier than the Egans we see. And that's where Dario says that the Egans were brooms in his wing, and each head was made from a plate because they were poor, hence the carving on the desk. That is Dario's portrait, which I'm assumed is sort of a cheaper version of Mark's laser portrait. They had a rope instead of an elevator too. I'm not sure if that's him exaggerating or not, but it's a little strange. While they're talking, Mark sneaks and writes a note under his desk on a piece of blue paper. And when he leaves for the day, he folds it up and he slips it into Mark W's jacket on the rack. And then when he comes into the next day, and this is my favorite scene in the episode, he comes out and Milchick reads the note aloud, and he clearly knows that Mark wrote it. He's not quite that stupid, but it's supposed to be for Mark W, and it's telling him of the heinous conditions of the office, and it calls Milchick a shambolic rube who goes by Milkshake, a man whose stupidity is rivaled only by that of the 9 core principles. And Mark just basically says, I want my team back. And he gets mad at Mark for what he did, and he comes over and he pulls his tag off and says that he's taking away his status of department chief and transferring it to Mark W. Mark W accepts it. He's kind of shocked. He kind of starts smiling. And he's like, why are you laughing? And he says, you don't know what I did to the kitchenette yet. So yeah, that whole scene was my favorite of the episode. I do wish, though, he had actually done something to the kitchenette, but he didn't. He just uses it as a time to rush off down the hall, and he's going for Milchick's office. He looks through doors to find the speaker, but he finds this bonsai kit. I don't know if there's anything important about it. There is a bonsai tree in Milchick's office, but that's what he finds in a drawer. He goes in. Miss Swang is yelling at him. He's not supposed to be there. She radios for Milchick while he's looking around, but he finds the speaker, which is what he's after. And he plugs it in and tries to contact the board. And he says that if they really want to do the right thing for Severed people, he wants to see his team again. If they're really the face of Severance reform, they can't just disappear everybody. But Milchick comes in, he pulls the plug, and he says that the board isn't going to converse with innies and that his outies fame has gone to his head. Mark just says that, he wants his coworkers back so they can serve Kier together. And obviously that's bullshit because Mark doesn't believe in that, but that's what he says to him. He takes him to the elevator, and Mark's like, am I fired? Because he tells him to go in and he won't answer him. So he just goes in, sends him home, comes back the next day, elevator reopens, and there is this painting there called Kier Pardons His Betrayers. Now, it's not exact to them. It's more representation because there's no woman for Helly. But I have to assume that this is saying that the 4 of them were pardoned for what they did with the OTC protocol and that they're forgiven, essentially. We did discuss this more in our live Severance breakdown, Severed Minds. So make sure if you haven't, you check that out because you can still stream it. It is in our live tab. And then after this, he checks out the painting, and then Dylan comes out of the elevator. Now, it seems like it's right for him after what happened with the OTC. He's like, did it work? Did it work? And Mark tells him that, yeah, it did, but he doesn't know about the others. But he does fill him in on how there's a new team and Cobel's gone and Milchick's now in charge. They hear Irving in the elevator, and he is yelling for Bert. So clearly he just came back right after what had happened with the OTC when he was, knocking on Bert's door. But he comes in, he's upset, he doesn't say anything. But Mark is waiting for Helly, and she does come out, and he runs to her and hugs her and says he was worried about her. Now, she doesn't specifically, to me, seem like what had happened last to her in the real world, like she came right from that place. Now, is that the case? I don't know. There's obviously some speculation going around that it is not Helly, but actually Helena that came out because she does act a little different when he hugs her and stuff. She's a little awkward, but she also could just be awkward because they shared a kiss and, she doesn't know what to do. So I don't know that it necessarily points to anything, but the scene is a little awkward, and it is hard to tell that she came from the immediate aftermath of what had happened. We will talk more about that later. I also just wanted to mention, Helly especially did not want to come back to this job. She tried to literally commit suicide because she did not want to be there. And she finally got out. Now, I know it's not only Mark that brought her back, and it wasn't really up to her, but I just kind of question that if he really cared about her, that he didn't think about it before he asked for her to come back. He just sort of did it without question because he wanted to see her. And I guess she's changed at this point, so maybe she would want to come back. I don't know. It just struck me as like I was sort of surprised they didn't mention it. So they talk a little bit, and then they go back to the office. Irving is still having a hard time and he needs a moment. Dylan questions that they aren't in trouble. Mark doesn't think so. Their message got out and they're famous. He does say he thinks Milchek tried to fire him because he sort of sabotaged the new people there. Dylan asks both of them what happened in the outside world, but Mark worries they could be waiting for them just to tell each other because they don't actually know what happened. So they're waiting for them to spill the beans, and they could be listening. Now, this, again, is a little strange, but Helly at this moment just happens to mention, hey, what happened to the security camera? I don't know. It seems a little too convenient. Irving comes out before they can really say much of anything. Then Miss Wang comes in and she says that Milchek is waiting for them in the break room. And they start to go down the hall towards the break room. Now, Helly questions about them being replaced, and Dylan asks about who was the, other version of him, and Mark says they weren't specific counterparts. Dylan says that he shouldn't feel bad for ending their lives, which Mark wasn't trying to and obviously hadn't thought of in that way. But Dylan's like, well, either way, you shouldn't feel bad for them because they probably deserve to die. And this obviously brings up the question of, if an outie quits, does the innie die? I mean, that's a big part of the show. But not just that, it makes me wonder what that says about Dylan, that he's just like, oh, who cares if they died? I was sort of surprised that Dylan said that. So then Miss Huang uses a black key card you can see there to open the break room, the hall to the break room. They walk down the break room hallway and they come in, and it is completely different than what they had before of a break room. You can see the purple seats there, of course. There are motivational posters, propaganda posters, whatever you want to call them, on the wall. I'm a frolic-aholic, which references, of course, one of the four tempers: woe, frolic, dread, and malice. Be ever merry, which I'm guessing it's a reference to when Dylan was turning on the OTC protocol. There were other things listed on the computer screen, one of them being beehive. So I'm assuming that's what that's about. And there's also a poster there, Grin and Baird It. And of course, Baird is the name of the Egan. Again, Mark lives at Bear Creek Townhouses. The video starts out, Lumen is listening, which I think is really significant because I think it points out the fact that even if they say they're not, that they are listening to them. We see the red, green, and blue projector there. And then we see an anthropomorphized building voiced by none other than Keanu Reeves. I thought this when I first heard it, and it has been confirmed by Internet Movie Database that it is Keanu Reeves. And it's the Lumen Administration Building, Branch 501. And it says that it's changed since its siring in 1870. And there's different pictures of different versions of it over time, kind of a log cabin, a little bit later where there's a horse-drawn carriage. Now there's cars, just kind of it through the ages, different versions of it. It says that in the basement floor is one of the premier severed workspaces in the 206 countries Lumen operates. And then it says, what makes a building truly happy? And that question came to light when 4 MDR workers, them obviously, were dissatisfied with their severed lives and conspired to mount what Lumen will call a macrodat uprising. And this video shows the characters of puppets, and it's actually extremely reminiscent of the Rankin Bass Christmas movies from the 60s and 70s, which actually makes a lot of sense considering all the old tech at Lumen. And then it says that under its nose unfolded danger and intrigue, including righteous anger, and it shows Irving. And it does also play audio clips. You can tell that they recorded pieces of their conversations. Again, Lumen's listening. But this right here, this is extremely reminiscent of the character Heat Miser from those cartoons. And it says that also unfolded inspiration, and it shows Mark, and he says that asks why they're still working in the dark, and as well as love. And it shows the two of them, Mark and Helly, kissing. And in the real world, I love this. Dylan's like, what the shit? And the two of them kind of look down. They're really embarrassed. It also talks about that there are tasty new snacks, as well as other incentives that have been reformed. There you can see Dylan with his candy. Hall passes have been reformed, I guess. And also pineapple bobbing, they run to. Now, this is important, I think, the fact that Helly's hands are clearly tied. I wondered if it meant how they have no freedom there, truly, no matter what they think. But it sounds like from Googling that apparently some people, when they bob for apples, tie their hands. I had never heard of that. I don't know. It seemed highlighted that her hands were tied. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But there you go. And I don't know. People don't really bob for pineapple, but they do there. And the other thing that I think this represents, there is a trailer for the season where there's a shot of Helly underwater screaming. And I think that this is probably foreshadowing that, just this little shot here. But that's from later in the season, so I don't know. It also says that the last reform is a brand new playful mirror room. And, this is kind of like colors. The show deals a lot with reflections and duality. So that's what that's about. And then when it shows a reflecting pool, there's a little goat. We know goats have some kind of purpose at this place. So we see Kier flying there. But then the building says that it took the quiet courage of 4 MDR heroes to show me who I am. Thank Kier for them. Thank Kier for the Macrodet uprising. And then slow clap by Dylan. This is where Milchek tells them that it is up to the innies if they decide to stay at Lumen or not. And that if they start their file, he'll assume they want to stay. But he says that it's not up to the outies. Now, I have to assume that at this point, they think they will all voluntarily come back rather than quote unquote die. I think, again, this is the illusion of a choice. I don't think that they would actually let them leave if they wanted to. I don't know. We probably will never know because I'm assuming that, we would assume the team would stay together. So we don't know, but I don't believe him at any rate. He also makes a point of saying there are no cameras or microphones in the room now, like the rest of the severed floor. And this is where he said the privacy shouldn't be packing into the supply closet, which I had mentioned earlier. So he leaves with Miss Wang to give him a chance to talk. But Dylan even doesn't believe him. And he's like, if we're going to talk, we need to whisper. But he wants to know, what happened during the OTC protocol to them. So Mark tells them about Miss Casey and what happened, and also that wellness is completely gone. But when they ask Helly what she saw, she completely lies. She says that she just saw the inside of a really boring apartment and was watching a nature show. She says she went and told the gardener, what was going on at Lumen. And Irving, he's a little suspicious. He's like a night gardener. So yeah. Now, why would Helly lie? There are really 2 reasons. The first, which is totally plausible, is that she first feels shame for being, Helena, but she's afraid with the others that the others will be upset when they find out that she's an Egan and that she's pretty much really responsible for a lot of what's going on with them. But there's a second explanation. I know this is polarizing. People have different theories, but the other explanation is that Helly never came back and Helena actually did. I feel that if they can turn innies on during the outies life, there's no reason to think they can't turn Helena on, turn an outie on in their innies life. Plus, they wouldn't have to hide the information that goes on at the company from her outie because she's a big part of the company. She already knows the secrets, we're assuming. So it's possible it could be happening. Personally, I think it's Helena, but I mean, it's up for debate and only time will tell. But the video did say Lumen is listening, so she could be possibly their spy. When they ask Irving what happened, he just says that it isn't their world up there, but he doesn't tell because he's in pain. He gets up after this and he goes, and Dylan says that he'll go after him because they have the day to get him back. So he's going to go. And at this point, Mark and Helly talk in the hall, and Helly asks Mark about the wedding photo and if him and Gemma, him and Miss Casey, whatever, however you want to say it, if they looked happy. And Mark tells her that there was nothing like that between him and Miss Casey ever, but that him and Mark are the same-ish people, so he wants to save her. Now, this is where she tells him pretty vehemently that, that we're not the same as our outies. We don't owe them. Now, whether she truly means this and she's an innie saying this and she means she's nothing like Helena, which obviously makes sense, or she's saying this as Helena, meaning she's nothing like Helly, is up for debate. But at any rate, she says they're not the same. And she says she'll stay and help him with Miss Casey if that's what he wants to do. Next, we get Irving's conversation with Dylan, where he tells Dylan that he failed the objective to find someone to tell about Severance, and instead he went after Bert, only to find out that he was with somebody else. and that's why he's so upset. However, when he hugs him, he does tell him about the black hallway paintings and confirms that it's a different hallway than the break room hallway, which I have to say, I really don't understand making other hallways dark because it's confusing. I think they should have kept all the hallways white except for the testing floor. That's my own personal opinion, but some of them are a little dark. But he says that it's not the break room hallway. But Irving wants to leave if he can't be with Bert and end the pain. And since we know that, or we think anyway, that essentially any cease to be if they die, if the Audis don't go back to work, what he is suggesting is tantamount to suicide. And that's why Dylan says to him not to call it leaving. And he essentially says he cares about him, that he doesn't want him to leave, that he wouldn't be productive. And he, jokingly kind of says that he's Dylan's favorite perk. It's a cute little scene, and it shows, that they're friends and they've become a family. But Miss Huang interrupts them before they can really finish talking. And she is taking Dylan. So meanwhile, while they're on the way to Milchek's computer screen says, "Hello, Miss Cobel," which really pisses him off. I think it's just he wants respect. It's his office now. Why have they not changed it for him? Kind of upsets him. But also, it's the title of the episode. So it also serves that purpose, which is a little Easter egg there. So he tells, her to get it taken care of. And then Dylan comes in and he tells Dylan, kind of out of the blue, "Your wife's name is Gretchen. She wanted you to know that." And then he wants to take him somewhere. And he takes him into the storage room and he shows him the blueprints for the new renovation of the Audi family visitation suite. Now, we know that Dylan is interested in seeing his family now that he knows his Audi has a child. Now, personally, I think this is just another bribe for Dylan, like the other perks, to get him to play ball. And I don't know that I believe this in any way. Dylan asks if he'll be able to see his family, and Milchek really weirdly, suspiciously says, "If you take the name of the room at face value," which is just a really, really odd way to say that. He doesn't outright say yes, which makes me wonder if he's ever going to see anybody and it's just kind of like working for that perk that he can't get, or if maybe they'll bring somebody in for other members of his family and they could be actors. I mean, we don't know, because the only person he's actually met was his Audi's son, and it was very briefly. Because this seems like this would be something that would be forbidden, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But they are supposed to be making reforms out there, so at the company, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the fact that he also tells him, don't tell the others, we don't want them to resent you, that's a little suspicious. He doesn't want them to know because maybe he figures Mark will know it's bullshit. I don't know. But whatever it is, they come back out of the office, and when they do, we can see that Huang's on this computer. And it's a little computer, but it's really interesting that on the screen it looks like little circles that she's separating into different places, kind of like how they separate the numbers into bins. So I wonder if there's some big purpose to this, and it's just being, quickly introduced. So I don't know. It's interesting to me. And she pulls out her drawer, of course, all the colors. She pulls out her little Kier game, which again, red, green, and blue. And she gets, the little red ring around her Kier little figure there. In the end of the episode, they're back together, at least Mark and Dylan and Helly. Now, Mark asked Dylan, "Where's Irving?" And Dylan's about ready to tell them Irving left because he thinks he did. But it turns out Irving is actually in the office. He talked him into it. I think just because he let him know he was his friend and he wanted him there. And I think that Irving responded to that. It was a great scene, and obviously I think we're all glad that Irving's back, not just them. The family's back together now. I do wonder, though, about the fact that they're back together. Like, it seems like this was all done just to give Mark what he asked for. Like, why did they do it? It's an interesting question to me. I still think a lot of it may be more illusion of getting what he wants, and that maybe this was always the plan, and bringing the other workers in was just to see what happened, how he reacted. I don't know, but they seem to have given him what he wants. And he's happy, his family's back together at the office, the family he knows anyway. They're back together again. The other thing I did want to mention about this scene, though, is in the background is the song "God Walked Down" by the Allergies. And thinking about the fact that people think of the Egans like gods, that maybe that is a little Easter egg reference that that could be Helena. I don't know. We will hopefully find out sometime soon and not have to wait till the end of the season to find out. Now, the last bit, of course, is really important. Mark is on his computer and he's finishing his file with Cold Harbor. He's at 68%. He's separating the numbers into the little boxes. And as he's looking at this, it shows the reflection, his eyes of the screen, and then it shows on the screen suddenly is Gemma / Miss Casey. And it looks like some kind of vitals on the side, maybe some cells. These down here, though, are still the bins, which show the 4 tempers, which I find really interesting. So, I mean, what does it mean? I don't know. Does it mean he's somehow programming her severed chip? Is she part of an experiment? Cold Harbor could potentially hint at cold storage. We don't really know where she is, so it's hard to tell a lot of anything. But I don't know. This ending kind of really threw me because I wasn't 100% sure what it meant. But if you look at the next scene, and these images were taken in order, right after it shows that screen, it shows Mark's eyes close up again, and it shows the reflection of the numbers, not of her picture, which leads me to believe that he is seeing the numbers, not the picture. Maybe the picture is what's really on the screen, but because he has no memory of Gemma, he sees numbers instead. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think, so please tell me in the comments what you think. Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel and come back weekly for more breakdowns of Severance, as well as each Saturday starting at 8 p.m. Eastern is our Discord watch party where we stream the episode. The Discord link is in the description of the video. Following is our live discussion of the episode Severed Minds at 9 p.m. here on this YouTube channel, where we do an even deeper dive into the episode.